and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About Human Rights, the show in which we discuss all things related to human rights. I'm your host, Julz Allender, and I am part of the California chapter of Youth for Human Rights International. Youth for Human Rights International's purpose is to help enlighten and educate people around the world on what their human rights are, with the specific focus on the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And with this education, to enable and inspire the youth of today as our leaders of tomorrow to stand up and secure these rights for themselves and all people on earth. For each show, we like to take up one right and try to broaden your understanding of how this right is important to you and your loved ones. And for today's show, we will be looking at human right number 18, freedom of thought, which states, everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with others and in public or private, to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship, and observance. Let's take a look at a short video about this specific human right.
I believe in nature.
I believe in the spirit.
I believe in trust.
Beauty.
I believe in my mom.
Strawberry ice cream.
Fortune cookies.
Chocolate.
I believe in
The tooth fairy.
being honest with yourself.
I believe in Santa Claus.
Aliens, of course.
I believe what I want to believe.
I believe in myself.
I believe in myself. I believe in peace.
Let's examine these ideas a little more closely. Everyone has this right, freedom of thought. We are free to think, free to dream, free to believe, free to hope, free to observe, free to evaluate, hypothesize, create, plan. There are an endless number of ways of looking at what freedom of thought means. It embraces every aspect of life. And when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed at night, you are exercising your freedom of thought. What clothes will I wear today? All the way to who I will vote for in the next election is your expression of your freedom of thought. Most commonly, freedom of thought is confined to religious ideas, but this is a little short-sighted. In the United States, it is written into the Constitution in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, and it states, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And many countries have this freedom similarly stated in their own constitutions. Historically, religion and politics have become interwoven. When this occurs, religious thought becomes restricted towards the ruling party's beliefs. This can alienate that portion of society that does not have the same religious beliefs. It has been proven beneficial to society at large to keep politics and religion separated. But there are some societies that try to restrict not just religious thought, but political thought, economic thought, and beyond. You see evidence of this when political groups start monitoring the messages and correspondence of their own people. They can even go as far as to start restricting the movement of their people so ideas don't spread. This is the other side of freedom of thought. Eventually, even if very slowly, these societies fail. Restricting your own people's freedom of thought is like putting a noose around their neck. It is a restraint. The only real way to restrict people from expressing their own ideas is to place penalties of some kind around the expression of those ideas. One of the consequences of that is to inhibit all communication, since the most basic element of a society is the interrelations of people, and these relationships are based first on communication. It can be demonstrated that inhibiting the free flow of communication in any way inhibits all the other flows that make up a society. The flow of commerce will be inhibited. The flow of education and technology will be inhibited, to name just a few. Further, since most communication is private and just between two people, it places upon one or the other the responsibility to turn the other in for having a bad thought. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to understand how that could be abused. Most of us are not high government officials and spend most of our time at work. So what about in the workplace? How does freedom of thought get expressed there? By accepting a job and being employed by a company, you've committed to work for the company's benefit. You've committed to present yourself in a manner and perform duties that are designed to enhance the company. What is in the best interest of the company is usually decided by a select few top managers. These ideas are usually set as policy. Does this mean you must compromise your beliefs? Surrender some aspect of what you consider to be true to work there? No, not at all. All companies must follow rules that prevent them from discriminating. For instance, they cannot hire on the basis of religion or political beliefs or the lack of them. They cannot hire on the basis of race or ethnicity. This creates a very diverse work environment. Each person is very likely to have a different religious and political views. So part of having your own view on a subject is the recognition that others will have theirs. Part of maintaining your freedom of thought is maintaining everyone else's freedom of thought. The subject of tolerance is what comes into play. Being tolerant of others' viewpoints on a subject is not the act of accepting their point of view as your own. It is just accepting it. It is just accepting that it is their point of view. Expressing your point of view on a controversial subject would need to include with an acceptance that others may see things differently and a tolerance for that to occur. A willingness to hear the counter argument. There are many benefits to having a society and industries where freedom of thought is the prevalent ideology. Historically, all great cultures were preceded by a period of freedom of thought and tolerance of others' opinions. Ancient Greece and Athens, very early Roman society, the Golden Age of Baghdad in the late 8th century, all were preceded by a period of freedom of expression in religion, politics, and scientific ideas, and continued as long as that freedom could be carried forward. They collapsed or began to shrink, even if slowly, when the free thought of ideas were looked down upon. And only when these freedoms become suppressed did these societies truly fail. Progress starts with a new idea. Many new ideas come from experiencing diversity. Seeing how others live and the tools they use to solve everyday problems opens up doors to new ideas for those who truly just want to keep moving ahead. Is there any more basic freedom than freedom of thought? I don't think so. Without freedom of thought, progress stops. Without it, creativity ceases to exist. Without it, we will be condemned to a life where everything is the same clothes, the same colors, and the same ideas. With freedom of thought, we have new music, new inventions, new ways of doing work. With these new ideas comes a willingness to set goals ever higher to better mankind. With freedom of thought, we have inclusiveness. Inclusiveness of all cultures, all ethnicities, and all religions. Freedom of thought is the idea that not only are you allowed to look into any subject that you wish, but you are responsible for seeing to it that everyone else has that same freedom. Before we get to our special guest for the show, let's take a look around the world at some good news that occurred in human rights. Under a new law in New York City that goes into effect this year, buildings more than 25,000 square feet are required to meet certain emission standards, and they get even stricter in 2030. To meet those standards now, rather than waiting until the last minute, a cutting-edge state-backed project is underway at a 17-story office building that was built in 1931. It's swapping its fossil fuel gas boiler for much more efficient electric heat pumps. The state has invested millions in backing the project because they're hopeful it will serve as a model in decarbonizing over 6,000 other high-rises in the city. Why is this good news? Most of Americans' 125 million buildings run on fossil fuels, and the energy they use contributes significantly to the climate crisis. Investing in this project could be a key climate tipping point and serve as a model for not just New York City, but major cities with big buildings all across the country. All right. And so my guest today works with an organization whose purpose is to better communities and the lives of people through education, awareness, and a common sense guideline for happier living. She has spent the large majority of her life working with different organizations that work tirelessly to give people workable solutions to bettering their lives. And I am excited to welcome our special guest today, MJ Pase. Hi, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thank you for being with us today, and I'm excited to not only hear, but have you share all the incredible work you've done over the years.
All right. Well, we are basically a group of volunteers that decided we wanted to do something to better our communities. And as a lot of us were educators and had been working in either drug rehabilitation or in schools, we decided we would form a group. And it's called Association for Life Improvement, Values, and Education. It's a nonprofit group. We formed it in 2010. And for the last 14 years, we've been attending festivals, giving seminars, giving talks, sometimes even having floats and parades in the Christmas parade, dealing primarily with truth about drugs, to give drug education, and the way to happiness, to give a common sense guide to happier living that just reaches through every culture and every community, because they're just basic truths. Take care of yourself, be competent, honor your parents, respect the religious beliefs of others, be worthy of trust. Just simple guidelines that found that sometimes you need to see them and say, oh, someone else believes this, or I hadn't thought about that, or that is important. And it can make a subtle but very important shift in someone's life. And of course, truth about drugs talks for itself. Drugs are a wide problem, and a lot of people don't know. They think, oh, a little bit won't hurt, or, well, I can do this and get away with it, or I'm young, I'll party now and get serious later. But actually, you know, every time you contribute even to that whole line of drug taking, not only bad for you mentally and spiritually, but again, when we're talking about freedom of thought, you can't think very well, and you get duller and duller and duller. I have a lot of doing a lot of events. I talk to young children and teenagers particularly, and I'll ask them, I say, you know, what is the one tool you take with you wherever you go? And they don't know what I'm talking about, or they'll say, well, my phone or my computer. And then I have to say, well, okay, and let them think a little bit. And then finally they don't have an answer. And I say, what's your mind? You take it wherever you go, you know, so keep it sharp so that you can think, so you can analyze, so you can look and solve problems, because life is not necessarily easy for anyone. But if you don't have that basic tool, which is your own mind, then you're going to have some problems.
Yeah, I love that. You know, obviously, probably wouldn't have been the first thing I would have said. Like, what do I always take with me? Probably would have been my phone too. But it is our mind. I mean, gosh, what a great statement to tell a young adult or a child, and have them start looking at life that way, or even looking at themselves that way, of simplicity and power of truth, like with the work you're doing with truth about drugs, and the simplicity. I think there's always power in simplicity, you know, with the way to happiness and the ways to living, and these tenets that one lives by. But yeah, I love that, you know, yeah, make sure you take your mind with you is a great But I think it's a realization, because as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, gosh, I need to operate with my mind and my freedom of thought and my viewpoint. And I think the younger you can start having those conversations, that individual is going to have a much more self-determined life. So yeah, that was a great analogy.
Yeah, and it's actually very rewarding because you see that light bulb go on and it can relate, and they suddenly know what you're talking about. And then they'll say, yeah, I don't want that to happen. And they don't really, with the education, they get the idea, okay, there are effects. I have a cat that's trying to come into the picture.
Oh, no worries.
But it's very rewarding to see that, and to see just that they realize that there is agreement and there is help. We have educators that come up to us, and we have kits for them, all free of charge. All of this is free. We have volunteers that donate and create the energy or funds for this, so we can give them all the materials they want free of charge, because our goal is to make things better. And we do that through making people more aware.
Right. Yeah. No, that's great. And so let's talk a little bit about you. Where you grew up, and I think if there was a point in your life, because not everyone, I talked to a lot of people on the show, and it's definitely opened my eyes to the amount of good works that are being done on a very large level, but not everyone has spent, like you or like I, a large majority of our life helping others and volunteering. And so I'm interested, with your background, was there a point in time, or what sparked that for you, that you were interested in people and helping them?
When I was a young girl, I've been always very close to my family and my mother. And we were talking one day, and just about problems with friends and how to get along. And I said, well, I really believe that you could talk to anybody about anything and come to a solution. And she says, but if someone's coming down the hall with an axe, you can't stop and talk to them. And this was a new concept for me at that age, and I didn't really understand it. But that made me start thinking, well, yeah, but why would someone be doing something like that? Why would someone want to? We all have brothers, we all have sisters, we all have families, we all have people we love. Why would anyone be that way? So that kind of made me curious. And so I've always read books of that sort of thing and been interested in people and making things better. I also had a brother who had a drug problem. And, like some people think they can get away and do casual usage. Well, he was one of these, like many others, that didn't. And I saw this brilliant, very smart person become foggy and unable. And this was kind of got my interest in drug rehabilitation. What causes this? How can it be avoided? Because he was a smart boy and fell into that trap. And I just saw there's so many different potholes that you can fall into through momentary need, that if you had a few more tools, you would be better able to avoid them. Or someone says, hey, here's not a turn you want to take. This is not that road. Take a look where it goes, and maybe this is not where you want to go. And that's when education comes in. And working with like-minded people just to make that improvement, because people are smart. They want to do well. They want to help others. They want to have a nice society, nice families. This is not a new concept, but sometimes you have to give someone some tools that will help them along the way.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. I think addiction is a vice, and it's just so unfortunate. It's a heartbreaking process to watch somebody go through. But again, going back to the education piece that you spoke about, and giving someone tools, and I think the younger that they can get these, the more likely they are to not fall into that, or not try it, and things of that nature. So with that, tell us a little bit. You mentioned that within your organization Alive that you work with Truth About Drugs, or you mentioned something about Truth About Drugs. What is that exactly, and how can one benefit from it?
Well, there are little pamphlets that go over, I think they're like 13 or 14. There's one general pamphlet that talks about, what happens in little information. Then there are different booklets and all kinds of drugs, from overusing prescription drugs to marijuana to alcohol to cocaine to all the various different ways that someone can take something and abuse. So I have a cat here. Maybe I should introduce you.
You can put it on your lap if you'd like.
Yeah, they would like to help with this conversation. Anyway, it just gives data on what happens, what are the effects. And so many people, particularly young kids, they don't think about the effects because they're young and they think everything will last forever. Don't realize that, if they want to have a continuing good body that will continue to work and have, not problems down the road, that there are things that they shouldn't do. And you certainly can't take time to get educated or do things if you're busy, having a mind that doesn't work. There is no freedom of thought. And you're just following in a kind of a mind-numbing situation, which isn't good for anybody, isn't good for the communities, promotes violence.
Right.
Yeah. I have actually talked to drug dealers before and said, they said, well, I don't do it, someone else will. I said, but it starts with one person. That one person that says, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not going to contribute to violence and crime. No, I'm not going to make my fellow people, not able to think. And that actually made him pause for a moment.
Wow. Talk about confronting evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moments to gain for so much pain and problems. And it's worldwide,
Right. Right.
So.
Yeah. So within the booklets, I'm curious, obviously, I think sometimes, and I'm not a parent, so I'm not going to speak for parents, but I think sometimes it's like shelter the children from what these things are. And then, the booklets that you're talking about is like the complete opposite of, this is cocaine, this is what heroin is, this is what fentanyl is, this is what methamphetamines are. So I'm curious what responses you get from children and parents with, the kind of that cold, hard truth.
Well, the cold and hard truth is that kids as early as 8 years old, third grade, will have people come to them, either from an older brother or someone else saying, oh, this will be fun. Come do this. And so if they had the education, say, I don't think so. And they appreciate it. Kids want to know. I haven't had a parent yet that said, I'm not going to talk to my kids about that. They always, it doesn't matter what type of community, they know the problems and they have someone in their family that has been affected adversely. So they're very open to this. And kids are very interested.
That's great. That's really good. And I found the same thing, that anytime you give someone truth on something, and even if it's kind of cold and hard, it gives them more control. It allows them to, like you said earlier, think on their own and have a viewpoint. And we want kind of educated free thinkers within the society.
Yeah.
And then you had mentioned that there's educator kits, or that this has been placed in schools. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, there are many schools that use our materials. We have at drugfreeworld.org. You can go to there, on anyone across the world can go and say, I would like this material, and they will be sent to you. And the educator kits come with a booklet that goes over how you can do drug education with any size class, materials for all the students, posters. It's really wonderful. And we have a lot of these kits we hand out because teachers want them. Particularly the middle school and high school teachers, Elementary school, they'll do general things. But when it gets to middle school, they need this information. And I hate to say that it's for every community, but it kind of is. It's not just big cities. I don't live in a big city, and we have issues here. And a lot of people are making a lot of money at the expense of people who are suffering. And you don't realize it when you can't think because you can't think. And this is another thing I say, you take this one time, oh, it's wonderful, but you're a little foggy. And then you do it again and you're a little foggier. And then suddenly you can't compare. And you're still making more mistakes and getting less able, thinking it's going to make you more creative. But unfortunately, that's not really the truth. And I mean, I've just seen great artists fall into that pit, that, pothole, and, it's not a happy thing. It takes a lot to work out. And we have people that come to us, sometimes at a booth say, yeah, I've read your booklet and it really helped me. We're at a lot of different sheriff's offices that they have our booklets. They're the truth about drugs, and they give them out. And they're at drug rehab centers. It's really widely used and greatly appreciated. I haven't had anyone say, no, I don't want to, don't give me this.
Right.
I want to know, because people do want to know,
Yeah, that's good. That's definitely heartwarming to know that people do want to know. And I love that statement you just made, because it's very true. It's like, what was it? You can't think when you can't think, or you don't. What was it exactly?
You don't know. Once you're down that path, you don't realize that you're not so
Right.
sharp,
Right.
And you think nobody knows that I'm doing this, but they do, because I don't know if you've ever been at a party where everyone is drinking and you're not.
Yeah.
And, there's moderation. Moderation is fine, but some people take it very far and they think they're very funny and they're very humorous, and nobody else really does, So it's moderation. But on some things, like some of these drugs, it's not moderation. It's you just don't do it and you don't contribute to it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a big factor, that, like you confronted the drug dealers, like, you don't contribute to this. You don't contribute to ending somebody's life.
Exactly.
That's rough. Is there any specific success? You've obviously shared a lot of positives, a specific success story that stands out for you with the work that Alive does, whether it's the drug education or the Common Sense Guide to Living?
Well, statistically, whenever we do a big handout in an area, the drug usage goes down and the crime statistics go down. And it's nice to see that. I mean, it's the way to happiness when people look and say, oh, basically be kind, be nice, be trustworthy, don't steal, don't break laws, be competent, take care of yourself. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to do that. But statistics show that these do make an impact on the community. But for me personally, it really is those moments when somebody comes and sees, like, a sign that has a list of all the various different precepts or ideas in the way to happiness, and they just kind of are there and they're going, oh, okay, well, can I have a booklet? Because they want to share this with their family. That, to me, makes all the difference. Or if I'm talking to a teenager and they suddenly get the idea, oh, this is not good. Or I'm talking to a young, like, 12-year-old, and she says, yeah, I know, I've had some friends with this, and I know that this is not good, so thank you. And takes a booklet to give to her friends. Those are the little successes, because I do really think you handle things one person at a time, who then helps to make that difference with somebody else. And I just think if you put enough truth out there and education and things that are going to create a good effect in the world and show that you actually care. Here's someone that does care. I mean, I'm a volunteer. Nobody is paying me to do this or anything. It's because I care, and that makes a difference. And
Yeah.
those are the moments that mean something to me.
Yeah. Absolutely. I can agree with you there. And you brought up a good point. I think one of the things that we try to do on the show is obviously bring awareness and education to what everyone's human rights are, and that the understanding and idea that not only do you need to protect yours, but you need to protect others. And
Yeah.
then, well, we are trying to inspire others to do work like you are doing, and to let them know, like, look, you can just get involved, and these different activities do make a large difference. And so what would you tell somebody who maybe is on the fence about helping, or how simple it is to help and get involved?
I would say just start. Find a community, someone in your community that's doing something beneficial, whether it's helping the homeless or doing a food bank or helping stray cats, or get involved in your community. Just get involved. There's so many different groups that are trying to do good things. I mean, we're one of them. Someone's to call and say, hey, do you need someone to come help at one of your future events? I mean, we'll be doing a big event in Salinas. It has like 10,000 different people come, and we do Truth About Drugs and Way to Happiness. And everybody wants a booklet, and when the festival's over, there are none on the ground, they're taken. And it's just a great event, but it takes volunteers. One person can't handle it. So for anybody who's thinking that, how do I do this? I would just look, go. You have a particular, maybe it's hunger that is an important thing for you. Maybe it is, drugs is a problem. I mean, there are so many organizations there. Sunset Center down in Salinas, they have a group, and it's mainly made of high school kids and other volunteers, and they are helping to get the word out. They use, Truth About Drug materials, and they're just volunteers, just trying to make the community better. And anybody can do it. There's no special talent, but it's just a desire to.
Yeah, absolutely. And then if someone wanted to get more information about your organization, how would they do that, or how would they contact you?
They could contact us through Truth About Drugs, really.
Okay.
We did have a website, and I'm not sure if it needs to be updated recently, but what we do could be done through drugfreeworld.org or the Way to Happiness Foundation, either one.
Excellent. And then as we come to the close of the interview, I first ask the guests if there's any additional information you'd like to share or whatnot about the organization or any of the human rights.
Well, I love the Youth for Human Rights, the whole thing about it. I think it is so important. And that is another thing that so many people do not realize, that they have rights. They have rights, and others have rights, and they're so important. The freedom to move, the freedom to think freely, freedom from all these things, freedom to privacy, to ownership. They're each very key. And so I thank you for doing this, because I think this is a great benefit as well.
Well, thank you for that very much. And I thank you for what you do. And then we always ask our guests this last question as we coming to the close, and that is, what is your favorite human right and why?
Well, I think it would be freedom of thought, to tell you the truth, which is what you're doing today, because it is so key to everything. When you can think freely and are allowed to express yourself, then there's no limits. The inventions, the possibilities for the future, finding agreement, Because if you can communicate with someone your thoughts freely, then you can always find common ground. And as communication is to me, the universal solvent, there's no crisis. And that connects with what I felt as a young child. You can talk to anybody. Sometimes you have to get them earlier, before they're getting to anger or war. But even then, if you continue to work it, and I think that's important so we can have a world that's peaceful and happy.
I would agree. It's one of my favorites as well. Well, thank you very much, for one, for being on the show, and for two, for all the volunteer work that you do. There's so many people who are benefiting from the truth that you're putting out, and so I appreciate it very much.
Okay, well, thank you. And you too, very much.
Thank you. Well, that's our show for this week. As always, I hope, one, you got some information that is very useful for you and that you can share with others, and two, that you just start. Go out, volunteer, work at a local community center, shelter, whatever it is. But as we can all see, society could use a little facelift, and we are the ones that will do it. As always, you can check us out on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook at Youth for Human Rights California. We're on Instagram and Twitter at YHRCAL, and we are newly on YouTube at Let's Talk About Human Rights. Thank you, and until next time, I will see you then.